Okay, so we've got our state and props set up, our React is working. It's time to actually bring in Web3 so that we can recognize Ethereum and our MetaMask, and that way we can connect that to our blockchain whenever we load our app. Because you got to remember that all of these components are just being loaded, and they're these life cycles that come up and they go up into React, onto JavaScript on the engine, and they work in a way that's supposed to way that work in this refreshing style, which in this refreshing type of style, which makes it much more efficient than let's say how we were working with JavaScript before when it came to websites and applications. Um, Oh yeah. So when this automatically loads, when the page automatically loads, we want to be detecting essentially the MetaMask and the Ethereum, essentially the MetaMask and the Ethereum up over here. So in order to do that, when we were writing out our blockchain code with Truffle, we would use Web3, and it's the same thing in React. We're going to bring in Web3. So what we want to do is import Web3 from Web3 like that. Okay. And then we're going to create a function to load our Web3. So it's going to be an async function. So we want to say async Web3. Okay. And what do we want to do? Well, we want to create some conditional logic. We want to say that if window.ethereum, so if we find the window of Ethereum, okay, then window.web3, and we want to create a new Web3 window.ethereum. And then we need to await window.ethereum.enable. We're going to run the enable Ethereum, and we're going to enable it. We're going to call it like that. Okay, so this is basically saying here that if there is a window, so if in our window, this is our window, it's a global function, it's a global function here for window. So if in our window we detect Ethereum, MetaMask, then we want to create a new instance here of Web3. Then we want to essentially enable it. We want to enable our Ethereum from our window. So we're going to wait for that. So we're going to wait, and we're going to await for it to be enabled. Okay. And then we want to say else if window.ethereum, else if window.web3, then our window.web3 is going to be a new web3.current provider. And if we can't find that, if we don't have Ethereum, or we don't have the current provider, then what we're going to do is, oh wait, hold on a second. Sorry, this needs to go else here we can say window.alert. And oops, we don't need this. Hold on a second. Components. Nope. Let's get that done. So there were some extra curly brackets I just cleaned up. And okay, wait. So before I finish the alert message, let me just run through. So we're saying if we find window.ethereum, then we want to enable. We're going to wait for window ethereum.enable. Or if we find Web3 in our window, then whatever the current provider is, we're going to go for a new Web3 with the current provider. Otherwise, if we don't find this, then we're going to create an alert, and we're going to say, we're going to tell whoever's connecting to the network, no Ethereum browser detected. Check out MetaMask, for example. Check out MetaMask, or you can check out MetaMask. So essentially, this function connects the app to the blockchain, and if you're not following along, it really literally it doesn't really matter. The important thing is that this is what MetaMask. These are the step-by-step instructions that MetaMask provides essentially, and you're going to see this whenever you want to hook it up to the blockchain and hook it up to our browser. And okay, so now that we have this function, we actually need to call it in order for it to work, but we're not going to call this function in the render, right? We don't want to call it here. But where exactly do we call this function? Well, we want to call our function within our class app. We want to load this before, we want to mount this before we're even rendering, essentially before we're even rendering. And we can do this by using one of the life cycles that React has. And React has several life cycles. We're going to create async component will mount, and component will mount is called immediately before mounting occurs. And we're going to go await this.load web3. Oh, and I just realized a typo. This shouldn't be async web3. We want to call this load web3 because we're loading it. So let's fix that. And I just want to actually give a warning here. Component will mount is considered by React to be unsafe when it comes to async re-rendering. And it really, I mean, it's going to work and it's fine for what we're building, but because they consider it to be unsafe with async re-triggering, what we can do is we can just call it unsafe component will mount instead of component will mount. They prefer that we use that as a best practice because using component will mount is not the best practice with React. We're going to be bad boys and bad girls and go ahead and use it. So let's save this now and see if this will actually load up MetaMask to the blockchain. So we're going to go back to our app and we're going to refresh. I'm going to scroll up. And wait a minute, I just realized that it says the tag H is unrecognized in this browser. So I made a mistake when we rendered out our hello world. Maybe some of you caught this. For the header, this shouldn't just be an H. We have different types of headers. We can do 1, 2, 3. They changed the size. So I wanted to put H1 actually. So that's just a typo on my fault. So back for the hello world, it should have been H1, not H. And let me just save that and refresh. And we're just getting some regular warnings here. Or just see some regular warnings here. Okay, this is fine. Oh, and it says we don't need to use the word image. That makes sense. It's redundant. So I'm going to go to the nav bar. And in my alt where I added bank image, I'm just going to write bank. And that should get rid of that warning. Refresh. Okay, that's gone. That's gone. And if I check in our terminal, looks like everything is working and set up. Looks like everything is working here in this terminal, which is great. Looks like we're compiling successfully. We've got some warnings, but that's fine. So we're using, again, the component will mount, which essentially just is calling our load web3, and it calls it immediately before mounting and before we render. And we want to do this first before we do anything else because we want to make sure that our MetaMask loads. It's the number one priority. Otherwise, nothing's going to work. That's why we add this into here. Now that we've added the Web3 and we call the function, now that we've hooked up our Web3 and hooked up our Ethereum and we call the function, let's go ahead and actually load the blockchain data as well. And we can do this by creating a function called load blockchain data. So I'm just going to add it right now, even though it doesn't exist yet. So we'll just do load blockchain data. And we're going to call this as well. And we can just create another async function in order to load our blockchain. So what we're going to do is we're going to say async load blockchain data. It's a function like this. And what we do is we can set a variable constant web3 equals window dot brain freeze web3, and then we can also make an account constant account equals, and this is where we can actually get the account from our blockchain data, and let's see if it's all up and loading. So we can do web3.eth.get accounts like that. Okay, and we can actually console.log the account like that. So we could do console.log account. Okay, and so let's just save this and see if we can log the account. Okay, so I'm back here on our page here. I'm going to refresh. And looks like we got a promise that was pending. So for some reason, it didn't actually run the async. Let's see why. Oh, can you spot the problem? what went wrong here? How come we didn't receive the promise? Well, we call the async pattern, but we're never waiting for anything, right? So not capitals like that. So we add the await like this, and let's go back and try again. And if you look here, we see an array, and there it is. That's the account number. And if we look at those last digits, 11E87A0, and go to Ganesh, 11E87A0, we have a match. We are successfully retrieving the blockchain data, and we are successfully loading in our Web3. So, okay, and so just to further demonstrate that we are essentially with this load Web3, we are bringing in the MetaMask and hooking up our Ethereum and MetaMask. If we were to remove the async load Web3 and we removed the load, right? Or we don't even have to remove the function. If we don't even call it and we save and we go back to our Firefox, what we're going to see in our errors here is that we get this MetaMask no longer injects Web3, and then it wants to send us to this document. And if we click on the document, it actually goes through the code that we just set up together to inject it. So there it is. If you want to read more about it, you go to the MetaMask docs, guide IO, guide provider, and you can go into the window Web3s. You can look at the APIs, and you can take a look at all this stuff. I always encourage you to go to the docs and check it out. But hopefully, if anything, this just shows you that the progression of events, and that in order to load the blockchain data successfully, we need to have the MetaMask up and operational. And when we have everything working together, we go back, we go up, and we see that the account is loaded. Awesome. Okay, so this is a great point to stop for now. We have successfully injected MetaMask into our application with Web3. Go ahead, take a break, have a coffee, and in the next video, let's keep on keeping on. Okay, see you soon.